Good morning, everybody. I know it's been a long time since I've been on here. I just wanted to give you all an update on, another update on what's been going on, what I've been up to, my plans, stuff like that. I did write them down so I can try to stay on track. I'm sorry I just got up not too long ago, so I still look a little rough. And I'm getting like a sty in my eyes and my eyes swollen. But I do have my coffee, so I guess I'll just start out. So I have been studying for the PACT exam. I did find out more information about the PACT exam. I don't remember in my last video if I talked about the Texas Teachers webinar or not, but I'll go over it again. Go out, please. I don't care. So I'm still kind of like asleep. I'm not asleep, but I'm just not all here yet, so bear with me. So I've been, with COVID going on and all that, it was the summer, so I wasn't really worried about rushing through to get to this PACT exam. I did attend a webinar with Texas Teachers talking about the high needs areas, stuff like that. So, and they did like a Q&A at the end. And one of the questions that I asked was about the Texas PACT and the Texas exam. So I figured I would just start with that and kind of clarify on that, because that's kind of like why I've been distant, I guess. I don't know. So I asked her, like, do you have to take the PACT and the Texas, or the PACT instead of the Texas? Like, what's the deal? So basically she said, yes, you do have to take the PACT exam to get into the program. So it's kind of like an entry exam, kind of like a GRE, if you will, like to get into grad school, like you have to pass this test, or like the TSI exam to get into college. So it's really just like any other entrance exam that you would take to get into a program. So to get into college, you have to go take a test, and it's kind of like a placement test, whatever, and they're trying to figure out where you're at. So the Texas PACT is kind of like that. So they want to make sure that you're proficient in reading, writing, and math. I guess basically that, making sure that you can handle what they're going to throw at you. So you take that, you get into the program, you start taking your classes. At the end of the program, you take your Texas exam, because that is your teacher certification exam. So you still have to take it. You can still use the book that I used. I don't even know where it, oh, here it is. Hang on. Sorry, I've got so many books and stuff that you can still use this. So I've already gone through the entire book. So everything, I'll just use it as like a refresher, and I'll go over that whenever I get through the program. But right now I'm working on the PACT, studying for the PACT. I finished the reading portion on 240 tutoring. I am about halfway done with the writing part, but I'm really good at writing. I'm like a grammar Nazi, so I'm not too worried about the writing portion. So I'm thinking about skipping that and moving on to the math portion, because I'm not great at math. So I'm thinking about just skipping the rest of the writing and moving on to the math, because that's where I'm going to need the most work. Honestly, once I realized this was like an entrance exam, I really wasn't that worried about it, because I got my GED when I was 18, and you have to test for 8 hours for that test. So I'm used to testing for long periods of time. Granted, that was a long time ago. I did that. I did my pharmacy technician exam. That was like a 3-hour test, and that was loaded with math questions. So I'm not super worried about passing this one, but I still want to study on 240 tutoring just to make sure, if there's anything that I struggle with. Like, I'm not a fraction person. Like, I've always struggled with fractions, but I was really good at geometry, which is kind of weird because, like, they kind of go hand in hand. So I don't get that, but there's some things I'm better at than not, so I just kind of want to take the math portion, get that out of the way, and then go ahead and take my test, because we are coming up to the new school year. It's July 30th right now. So, the new school year is going to be starting very soon. But right now, I don't know if the testing centers are even open. So I'm studying for the PACT exam, but I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to take it. So I think all the schools and campuses and stuff have been shut down over the summer. So I haven't really been in a huge rush to get this going, but it's looking like they're going to be open for the fall semester. So I'm trying to get it in gear with that. So I'm going to move over to the math section today. I'm off today and tomorrow. This really is not a good angle for me because whatever. I'm going to move over to the math section today and start working on that. I'm off work today and tomorrow, so hopefully, I can see how bad the math part's going to be on 240 tutoring, and hopefully I can just take my test. And I really want to hustle on Texas Teachers. Like, I just want to get in. Like, I'm so impatient with myself and like with the process. Like, I just want to be in the program already and be working towards it, but I have to take this test first before I can get into the program. I did join a couple pages, Texas Teachers pages on Facebook, and a lot of people seem to be flying through it, so I'm not too worried about that. All the advertisements and stuff say 14 weeks, which is not really bad. I mean, it's 3.5 months, but that's not that bad. The fall semester is like 5 months or something, so I'm not too worried about it. I did see a thing on there where you have to do observations in elementary, middle school, and high school. So I didn't know anything about that. I don't know if that's a requirement or if it's just that person because of the test that they're taking. I don't know. But I saw somebody posted something about that, so I guess I'll figure that out when I get there. But one of the things, now that I've talked about the tests and all, I kind of want to get into what I've been doing lately and what I've been struggling with. So I have been struggling a lot with life, with my depression, anxiety, stuff like that, and what I want to do with myself. Like, it's been a real struggle. It always has, to an extent, because since I was like 8 years old, I've been 50-50, like straight down the middle between teaching and psychology, like doing some kind of therapy, something with children. Like, I've always been 50-50 on that. So it's continuing. Hang on. Sorry, my kid came in. So I've been struggling with that. The teaching and the therapy part. I did get my bachelor's in psychology. I minored in human services, which is basically counseling, therapy, stuff like that. So I mean, it's kind of been an ongoing struggle. One morning I wake up and I want to teach, and one morning I wake up and I want to be a therapist. Like, it's been a legitimate struggle for me in my brain, just going back and forth, and it's exhausting. So during that Texas Teachers webinar, they were talking about high needs areas, and one of the things that they talked about was special education. So I don't remember if I already talked about this or not, but if I did, sorry. So the way that they were describing special education, like when I was in school for that short period of time that I was actually in public school, I always saw the special education kids as being the ones in wheelchairs that were nonverbal and, severely handicapped. And that's what that's like the huge misconception that everybody gets of special education, is that these are like the special needs kids. After listening to the webinar, that's not the case. So any kid that has an IEP, say they have ADHD or something, they need some kind of specialized lesson plan, the special ed people are the ones that do that. So they tailor lesson plans, they collaborate with the teacher and help create specialized lesson plans for these kids that have dyslexia, these kids that just don't learn the same way that other kids do, and they're really struggling, the ADD, ADHD kids, the dyslexic kids, stuff like that. So all of them fall under special education, which I did not know. You always hear of them going to like resource and stuff like that. So that's what resource is. Resource is part of special education. It's basically helping these kids that are struggling grasp the material better and stuff like that. So, as they're talking about this at this webinar, I realized that that's me. Like, I fit into that category. Like I did not get the traditional schooling that everybody else got. Like, basically the last grade that I completed was 2nd grade. And after that, it was like bits and pieces of, the grades up until I was 15 probably. And then I had to work my way, to getting my GED. And I had to do that mostly by myself. So, it's always been a struggle for me because I didn't have that structured environment. I didn't really know how to learn. Like, I didn't know how to take notes. I didn't know how to pick out, when someone's teaching or lecturing, I didn't really know how to pick out the key points, things that were important to write down, the things that you really needed to pay attention to, things that might wind up on an exam. I didn't know how to pick out any of that. To me, they were just talking, and you hope to God you can remember everything. That was how I saw, college and stuff like that, because my mom was going to college and she would take me with her, and I got to sit in on some of her classes. And that's like the schooling experience that I got, was a college, and that went on from the time I was like 11 onward. So, it wasn't like enough to really teach me how to act in a class environment. Like, obviously you sit there and you be quiet and you listen to the teacher, but you take notes, you write down things that you need to remember, you write down key points that the teacher says. I didn't know how to do any of that. Like, to me, it was just somebody talking. So I struggled a lot whenever I got into college because I didn't know what to write down. I was one of the people that wrote down everything that was on the board or everything that was on the PowerPoint on the thing. And I kind of got to the point where I would just write down the bolded words or their explanations or something like that. Like, it was a real struggle for me. And so eventually I found out that I could rephrase what the teacher said. So if there was something that the teacher said that in my mind was kind of complex, I could go back through and kind of paraphrase it in a way that I would understand it if I went back and read it later. So, there's certain things that like the teacher will say in class and you write down such and such, and then you go back and you read it and you're like, okay, yes, they were talking about this. That doesn't work for me. So I have to write down what they said, and then I always said I was dumbing it down for myself. I have to write down the explanation of what it was, what it meant, and kind of make myself a roadmap. So I did that with like my statistics class, and in my senior year, I realized a lot of people struggled the same way that I did. And so I would give my classmates my notes and, my roadmaps and stuff. Like, there were these algorithms in my statistics class that literally took up an entire page just to work through it. And I got different colored pens and I color coded it and was like, okay, you multiply this, you divide this, you do this, you do that, you do that. And I wrote down like a roadmap and I handed it out to several other students. And one of them came up to me at my graduation and was like, hey, I didn't know she was graduating. I didn't know she was a senior. And she came up to me and was like, hey, like, I really wanted to thank you for helping me with statistics. Like, that was the one class that I was struggling with the most. And, you know, I didn't know if I was going to pass it. I didn't know if I was going to be able to graduate. And, you know, thank you so much for helping me, because I was able to pass the class and I was able to graduate. And I was like, whoa, like, I didn't realize I was having that impact on these people, you know. One of my friends, she had really bad test anxiety. You know, I gave her all of my notes. I gave her everything that I had, you know, to try to help her get through this class. You know, instead of just, you know, little bits and pieces here and there, like I gave her everything I had, you know, to help her with the class. But I didn't realize at the time when I was doing it, that's kind of like an IEP. And so during this webinar, when they're talking about kind of rewriting the lesson plan so that other kids could understand it, I was like, that's what I was doing in college. Like, I was doing that for myself. And it just really hit home for me, because I was like, I've already been doing this. Like, maybe I need to do special education. Like, I've been doing that for myself. I was doing that for other people, like helping them with these lessons, with these classes. Like, and I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing. So, and I broke down listening to this webinar, and I just started crying. And I was like, oh my God, they're basically describing me and the struggles that I dealt with. And, you know, I didn't have somebody that would do that for me. And I didn't want to ask for help because I didn't want people to think I was stupid, you know. Like, my education has always been like a sensitive subject for me because I didn't really have an education. I've always felt like I had to work harder for the things that I wanted to accomplish, and I kind of did. You know, if the last grade that I completed was second, I had to bust my ass to get where I am. And so when people bring up anything about my education or something about my intelligence, it really, really rubs me the wrong way. Like, it just really upsets me. So, you know, because I had to bust my ass for years to get where I am. And, you know, it took me several attempts to pass some of my classes. It took me a long time to get my bachelor's degree. And some of that was because of natural disasters that we went through. Some of it was I just couldn't grasp the information that they were teaching, you know. So there were several different aspects. So listening to this webinar, I was like, maybe I am meant to be a special ed teacher. Like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, I felt like that was my calling. Like, this is what I need to do. But that's still the teaching side of that 50-50 that I've been on. So the other half of it is that I have always wanted to have my own practice in my hometown area, which is in the middle of nowhere. You have to drive an hour to get to doctor's offices, a mall, a movie theater. You have to go 30 miles to get to a Walmart or an H-E-B. And those are really your only options. Like, our hometown has a blinking light. It's probably 1 mile long from one city limit to the other. It is a tiny town. It has like 800 people. And the whole county is like that. They're just small towns here and there. They're all spaced out about 10 miles apart. So, and it's a very poor area. Some people have money, some people don't. A lot of people don't. We were one of those families that did not. So, you know, just being in kindergarten and first grade in public school, I saw a lot of, I was one of those kids that was always getting picked on because I was the poor kid, but I wasn't the only one, you know. And I know that a lot of kids probably struggled, and so I wanted to kind of give back to my community that I grew up in. Like, I wanted to basically be the savior for those kids. Like, I wanted to have my own practice in that county. I wanted to have like family therapy services, like all of that. But a lot of people can't afford stuff like that, so I was probably going to wind up doing a lot of it for free or for very low cost. Like, you know, some people do like a flat rate cash price, like $30 an hour, which is fine because therapy is typically only an hour, so they're giving you $30, you know. Most of the families can afford that. Some of them can't. For some, that's half of their grocery bill for an entire week, you know. So I went back and forth. I wanted to do marriage and family therapy, and then I wanted to do teaching. And so I just really struggled. I think I said it before that I wrote down like all of the options that I've considered. I wrote down, I want to say 4 or 5 things, and I was just like, you know, one of my methods of trying to work out this 50-50 cycle that I was stuck in, you know, I wrote down therapist, school psychologist, school counselor, teacher, and I think it was maybe those 4, but I just looked at it and I was like, okay, 3 of those 4 things put me in a school setting. So already that takes majority. So whatever I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be in a school. So I kind of put the therapy on the back burner and was like, I'm not going to mess with that. So, but I went back and forth with that like repeatedly, you know, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be a teacher. And I found all these other teachers on YouTube, and I was watching all their videos and trying to, basically I felt like I was trying to convince myself that I wanted to be a teacher, you know, trying to get that other half of me that's been struggling with therapy to come over to the other side to want to be a teacher. And it just wasn't working. Like I struggled so much. So I literally have been dealing with this for months, years basically, since I was a child, because even going through my undergraduate, after I got suspended from my university, I was going to this junior college, and I was talking to the advisors and different advisors. You know, at the time I had decided on school psychology. So because at the point that I was at, I wanted to have my own practice, but I heard you had to have your doctorate for that, and I was like, I can't go to school for that long. Haha. It took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. But going to these different advisors, like I kept saying, okay, well, I'm going to go for school psychology. And they were like, oh, school counselor. Okay. And I'm like, no, not school counselor, school psychology, totally different thing. In my mind, school counselor is like a paper pusher, like, oh, let's help kids, you know, apply for college, and let's make sure that they're okay with all these classes that they're taking. Let's sign them up for AP classes. Like, that's not really what I want to do. So like, I'm still not, I don't know. I may have a misconception about school counselor. I may not. So, but that's what you always hear about school counselors, is that they're paper pushers, basically. Not something I wanted to do. I would much rather be in a classroom teaching than to be a school counselor. So, but that's still in my list of things to consider. But, so one of these counselors that I talked to was just dead set on, no, I know what school psychology is, and you still have to have 3 years of teaching experience to be a school psychologist. And I was like, no, you don't. You're still thinking school counselor. And he's like, no, I know what you mean. So I was like, whatever, maybe they changed it, because I was at my university whenever they had somebody come in and talk to us about doing school psychology. So I was like, maybe they changed it. They also said at the time, that speaker that came in and talked to us said it was a 2-year degree. It's not, it's a 3-year degree. So it's halfway between a master's and a doctorate. So I knew that that wasn't what we were told. So maybe you actually did have to have teaching experience. So I went along with it, and I signed up for basically Teaching 101. It was Intro to the Teaching Profession. So I got in the class. They taught us how to make lesson plans. I got this cute little shirt that says keep calm and pretend it's on the lesson plan. And this is my inspiration for today. But I went along with it. The class was really fun. The teacher was really awesome. We did still have to do like 8 hours of observations in a classroom. So I observed first, second, and third grade. The third grade teacher like threw me in there and was like, I have a kid that's struggling. I need you to go help her in the hall. Just take her out to the hall, make her read to you, and whatever. And I was like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like, I'm not supposed to be helping you teach your class. I'm not supposed to interact with the students whatsoever. Like, I'm literally, like, it's in the school district's, like, rules. I'm not supposed to do any of that because I'm not licensed. I'm literally supposed to sit there and listen, and that's it. But she just, like, threw this student at me and was like, go out in the hall with her. I need you to help her. And I was just like, okay. So, you know, I didn't really get a whole lot of observation in with that grade, but first and second, I really liked. And one of the grades in first, I absolutely loved it. And I loved the teacher. I loved her organization. I loved everything about it. And I observed her like 2 or 3 times. And hang on. Try to get that, whatever. I loved it, and I was like, I can totally wake up at 5:30 every single morning and get to a school by 7. And hang on. Anyways, so, but I absolutely loved this first grade class. I love the teacher, her organization, the kids, the school building itself. Like, whenever I was in public school for those 2 years, I absolutely loved it. Just being in the building was like my happy place. So being in this first grade class, I was like, oh my gosh, like the kids were not what I expected. They were a lot more mature than I expected them to be, because a bunch of like 7-year-old kids, like, you know, she did have to get their attention several times to get them back on task, but otherwise they were like really smart. They were already like writing essays, and like when I was in first grade, I was learning how to read and do like 2 + 2, and I was like, man, times really are changing. So but I loved it, and I just could not wait to go to these observations. Like, I would wake up super early, and I would get dressed, and I would get all my stuff together, and I'm not a morning person. Like, it takes me 2 hours to get up to want to talk to somebody. You know, let me drink both cups of coffee that are like 2 cups to 1. You know, like, I need some wake up time. But on days that I was doing observations, like, I was just so excited. I was like, I can totally do this like every single day of my life. Like, I'm all for it. And so I keep trying to reflect back on that, and I'm like, okay, you loved it when you did this. Therapy in class, when I was doing these therapy classes, doing our mock therapy sessions, I was crap. Like, I was no good at it. But I had no training. So, excuse me, I kept telling myself, maybe with training, I can be really good, because I'm great at listening to people and being like, oh, okay, you know, active listening. You know, I was really good at active listening. I was bad at trying to make suggestions, which is what you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to lead the client to come to their own conclusions for themselves. Like, you're not supposed to plant ideas in their heads. You're not supposed to be like, oh, maybe you should go talk to this person and work out your problems. You're not supposed to say that. You're just supposed to, you know, kind of slowly ease them to come to their own realizations. You can't lead them there. You know, you can't give them the answers that they're asking for, because they will ask you for the answers, but you can't give it to them. So I was just like, therapy, which I'm bad at, teaching, which I absolutely loved, just being in the classroom, observing it, being in the room, just, you know, gave me the warm fuzzy feeling. Like, I absolutely loved it. The first fire drill scared the crap out of me, because I was like, oh my god, what do we do? And then I was like, I don't know where to go. Do I stand in line? Like, do I walk with the teacher? What do I do? Do I count kids? Like, I don't know. I was so scared. But the teacher just like kept it together, and she was like in charge, and like she grabbed her bag that had like all the kids' information in it. It was like the emergency bag, and she got all the kids together. The kids knew exactly what to do. They went out the nearest exit. They lined up over by these trees. She stood there, was like counting kids. She held up a little sign that said, we're all accounted for. And I was like, this is so organized. Like, holy crap. Like, I want to be that organized. But, you know, there was I just felt like I was trying to convince myself watching these teacher YouTubers and reflecting back on that experience. I was like, I absolutely loved it, but this has been my dream of therapy, to go back to my hometown and just be the savior for all these people. But I'm a humanitarian. Like, I want to help people. I want to save people. The world's not like that. That's not how things work. You can't save everybody. Like, no matter how much you want to, you can't. So, if I can, like, I think back to my kindergarten teacher. She was absolutely amazing. Obviously, she was the first teacher I ever had, but she was just so sweet and so caring, but she was strict when she needed to be. She kept us on track. And I think back to that class. Like, I remember my kindergarten classroom, the toys that we had in the room. We had like a legit playhouse in the corner. And I think about it, and I'm like, I loved kindergarten so much, you know, and I still remember the smell of her perfume that she always wore. And it was just like such an amazing experience for me. I loved it. And then I got to my first grade class, and my teacher hated me for some reason. It was kind of like Snape and Harry Potter, you know, like, she went to school with my dad and she treated me like crap, you know, like, that's literally the Harry Potter Snape experience, you know. So first grade, like, she kept sending me to the principal's office because I don't remember her ever teaching us anything in this class. And then she would give us these worksheets to do, and I'd look at it and I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. Like, I don't know what this is, you know. And then, like, I just remember a bad experience. There were a couple things that she did that were awesome that I remember. For some reason, I don't even know if this is a thing, but rock soup. Like, I think it was a book that she read, and then she made like rock soup in the classroom, and then she did like this thing with hot dogs, and she boiled them and made them into octopi, you know, little octopus hot dogs. And I was like, I remember her doing that, but like, why was she cooking in our classroom? Like, I don't know. And Cowboy Day, like, I remember Cowboy Day. That was so much fun. But like, I think back to that, and then I'm like, but therapy, but teaching kids, like, I know I want to work with kids. That's always been my end goal, is to work with kids, help kids, guide kids. But I'm like, do I want to teach them? Do I want to do therapy? Teach therapy, like 50-50. All this summer, I struggled. I'm sorry this video is so long. It's probably going to be an hour because I'm like halfway done talking about what I want to talk about. I'm sorry. But this is kind of like a therapy session for me too. So I just want to, like, just, you know, let y'all know where I'm at, what I've been struggling with, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be the only person dealing with this. So, I just threw myself off track. Okay, yeah, so I would study on 240 tutoring. I would watch these teacher YouTubers. I would get excited. COVID happened. They're not in their classrooms. Like, they're talking about their daily shopping and, you know, raising families and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, they're not in the classroom. I need to see a classroom to want to go that direction. They're not doing that right now. COVID, everybody's at home. Everybody's going stir crazy and losing their minds. Maybe I'll do therapy. And I applied to a master's program. I got to the point of doing orientation. I did my financial aid. I did, I applied for financial aid. I didn't get as far as doing the master promissory note and stuff like that. Apparently, I thought I had, but no. So I got to the point of doing my financial aid. I think I got through orientation. I don't even really remember, but I recall it saying complete next to orientation. But in the back of my mind, I would wake up some days and I'm like, okay, I'll do my master's for marriage and family therapy. And then some days I would wake up and I'm like, what am I doing?